Hello, I'm Jennifer Boyott. Welcome to the 8th edition of A Conversation with Leading Peacemakers. It is time for our leaders to be peacemakers and for peacemakers to be our leaders. I am so looking forward to hearing from the individuals that are gathered here today. And so let's introduce them. Marlenis Rosa has been advocating for women and children throughout her life. And she's also here on behalf of an organization called Pathways for Peace, that serves around the globe. And I'm sure we'll get to hear a little bit more about that later. Welcome, Marlenis.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm happy and pleased to be here.
Awesome. I've actually been acquainted with our next guest for a while. And so it's been beautiful to see her grow into her service. Tiana Swank spends her life uplifting women, and she is the founder of an organization called the Symone Foundation. Hello, Tiana.
Hi, pleased to be here.
Awesome. Danielle Battle is the co-founder of a program in Baltimore called Restoring Inner City Hope. And she is involved in empowering individuals and communities who may not have the same opportunities as some of us. And welcome, Danny.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to be here.
The Charter for Compassion is an organization that has been lighting the way in this world. And Felipe, Zurita, Quintana is here to share what they do. And also he brings his own light and his own service of what he does in the world. And welcome, Felipe.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here with all of you.
And in fact, I think we're going to hear from Felipe first. Felipe, how did you get where you are right now? Where did you, how did you decide to be who you are and do what you do? And let us know what you're passionate about these days.
Sure. Not a loaded question at all. I was born and raised in Chile. I currently live in Salt Lake City, Utah. My journey, I think it started very early on when I was 12, realizing that I was gay and I was terrified of that. I grew up in a very conservative, not super loaded, but we had means, we went to private school, and I was terrified. I never felt safe enough to tell anyone about my situation. And so, not even my parents, I feel like I just didn't feel the safety enough to come out or live authentically. And so, during that time, I made a lot of changes. I joined a different religion, and I did this and that, trying to thinking that because I didn't ask anyone about this, right? I thought that the only way that maybe I could get healed was through God. So a bigger commitment to God and everything. So I joined the LDS Church, the Mormons, Latter-day Saints, as people call it. And that was a journey that started, I went on my mission, went to BYU, graduated from BYU. And as soon as I was done with that, I left Mormonism and kind of started come out of the closet and all that. And I realized that there was a lack of safety in my life, that I never felt comfortable enough with myself or with anybody else to be fully who I am. I graduated from college with a degree in public health and in business marketing. And so my career kind of started with the nonprofit sector and doing work with health policy and later on with an organization called Golden Rule Project, which kind of led me to where I am today. The Golden Rule, as you all know, is treat others as you want to be treated, which is a principle that you can find in almost every sacred text, in almost every religion, in almost every civilization throughout time as a basic principle of humanity. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Treat others as you want to be treated. And what a simple but basic but super, super intense theme that is in humanity. And if we really put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, we're able to understand what situations that might be. Long story short, I started working for the Charter for Compassion about 3 years ago. And the Charter for Compassion started because of this lady named Karen Armstrong. She gave a TED Talk about the Golden Rule, treat others as you want to be treated. And in that TED Talk, she mentioned how religions have been sort of like manipulated by humanity to like take control and, you know, over people and whatnot. But if we focus back to that principle of treat others as you want to be treated, we might be able to achieve world peace. Now, if we, with the Charter for, this TED Talk was so good that she won the award by TED and got $100,000 and started the Charter for Compassion. Charter for Compassion is basically an organization where she gathered lots of different leaders and in thinking and philosophies and religions to get together and write a charter, a letter that talks about committing to compassion and how can that leads to peace in general and justice for all. So let me give you an example. We're walking down the street and you see someone right there that is in pain. You recognize that that person is in pain. That's sympathy. You walk down the street, you see this person that's in pain. You recognize that they're in pain. That's sympathy. But you also feel that pain with that person. That's empathy. You walk down the street, you will see this person in pain. You recognize that they're in pain. Sympathy. I feel that pain with them. I recognize that empathy. And I take action to eliminate that pain. That's compassion. So compassion, we see it as a principle of action, as the fuel to everything that we can do in order to eliminate the pain for somebody else, not just including myself. So there's a big focus on self-compassion, because when we have our cups filled, we're able to fill others' cups. Just like in the airplane, you know, when they give you the ideas like put your mask on and then help the kid or somebody else, it's the same way. We need to nurture ourselves first in order to nurture everybody else. We see compassion as the fuel to any social justice movement. So whatever is keeping you at night, as you start growing self-compassion and compassion for others, you decide to focus your energy on something that is critical to you. That might be the environment and you know, climate action, or women's rights, or gay rights, or social justice, anti-racism, arts, business, education. There's so many different topics that we have where we realize that as we build compassion, we can put that energy into a different specific issue that we're seeing, that we're facing, like immigration or refugees, and you know, the refugee crisis that's happening right now. It's crazy. And so the Charter for Compassion becomes then a hub, sort of like a center where all these different organizations, people, institutions can get together, know about the different projects, communicate with each other, co-create different projects around the world, and see how we, as we focus our energy into the compassionate movement, we can see better relations between different communities, interfaith work, so different religions working together. And then again, you know, like advocating for those that don't have a voice, or that they have been historically marginalized communities. And so how do we tackle racism? By increasing our compassion. So we have webinars, we have courses, we have live shows on social media, and book clubs, and different things that help us to raise our awareness on compassion for ourselves and for the world. So basically that's what I do. And I'm the marketing director at Charter for Compassion. So we do a lot of stuff in digital world. So social media, email marketing, newsletters, online stores. And now that we're back to pre-COVID times, as far as like gatherings goes, we are once again getting more active in conferences around the world as well. That's sort of like what I do.
Awesome, thank you. And I think, isn't there like a charter or a pledge that people can?
Yes, so the charter, the letter that all these thinkers wrote, it's on our website, and I can put the link here, and then, you know, maybe you can put it on the...
Sure.
here. But yeah, so people can affirm the charter, which to us, it doesn't really do much, but to you specifically, it should do something in the sense of like, maybe this is a way to commit yourself to compassion, to live a more compassionate life, to remember to love yourself a little bit more. And as you love yourself a little bit more, it's easy for that love to spread to everything around you, including things that are not alive.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the very beginning. Thank you, Felipe. Danny, how did you feel called to what you do? And what is it that you do?
Well, I was minding my own business, just being a teacher. And it all happened when I was dating my now husband, and he had gone to this little event. It was a prayer walk in a different part of Baltimore. And he was born and raised in a little tiny little pocket that is over sensationalized as super violent and terrible, called Cherry Hill. And he was like, I really want to bring that to my neighborhood. You know, his best friend had died on a corner there, so we made that one of the spots. So that's how we began. And we just let people, whoever you pray to or however you give out energy and light, like, we welcomed you to come with us. We had some stops. And then at the end, it was like a little festival. Our first year, we only had like 34 people and some hot dogs and a marching band. And I was new to the area. And it's an area that has just been historically marginalized by racism, excluded from many opportunities. And here I was, this little girl from Minnesota, you know, upper middle class, just like, hi. And I spent a lot of years just cooking hot dogs and building trust in this community. And we started to then add just more events for the first few years. We had things called reality checks and barbershop talks, where it would be same gendered kids with, you know, so it'd be like a bunch of girls with like girl speakers or boys with, you know, male speakers or whatever. Just kind of being honest and open about life and what they did to kind of move to where they were. We started to realize that we should probably stop gendering things and just open everything wide up. So we didn't know. So we just started loving on folks. And then in 2018, the principal of the elementary middle school in that little neighborhood came to us and said she really needed an after-school program for her middle school boys. And I told my husband, like, it's a special group of kids. And so we found a physical space, and my husband is total blue collar, had never worked with kids before, and I was still working. And we started the Rich Restoring Inner City Hope program. We formalized it. And so now we were doing events, and then we were doing youth programming. As soon as we got the physical space, COVID hit. So we shifted for a while and we became a COVID hub. So we gave out well over 100,000 pounds of warm food, fresh food, produce, meats. Even though I'm a vegan, you still need meat if that's what you eat. So not just shelf stable, super salty things, you know, that are always flooded in communities, but we partnered with other nonprofits and co-ops and food trucks and all of that to really, our whole purpose is to lead with love and to make sure that when you're handing something to someone, it's not the bottom of the barrel, but somebody can happily take what you give them, you know. We've evolved to doing holiday events. So we do Christmas and Thanksgiving every year, giving out turkeys, bikes, toys, pictures with Santa, hot cocoa. There's always a DJ, so you can dance and celebrate. I get to work the door because I like to talk. And then we started a workforce development program where we not only helped adults in the neighborhood find jobs, but also just being a resource. The big thing is just being a resource. And so our belief is that you can't pour everything into children and then send them back to houses that haven't changed and expect to have a huge change happen. And so we wanted to just direct our love to entire families and peoples of Southern Baltimore or whomever we're touching. And so we had been doing that for a while. And then with our youth is pretty much our main focus. And we were teaching an entrepreneurship class that tied to financial literacy, because the best way to teach math is with money. And so the kids designed shirts because we print shirts to raise money. They were working on creating a bike courier service. And then we landed on juicing. And they got so into it because, you know, young folks get to make something right in your face, taste it. Like, there's something about that tangibleness of food, and me wanting everybody to be plant-based was like, yes. And then my husband was like, I think we should just open a juice bar. And I was like, oh, this means we're going to open a juice bar. And so we are opening a juice bar next Saturday. It will be youth-led. So we have hired 10 of our students. They are currently training. We are not in the restaurant field, just like we were not in the after-school program field or workforce development field. But all of it boils down to is love, right? I know that the show is about peacemaking, and it made me think peace isn't a word I tend to use, but I feel like in order for you to have or find peace, you have to have this safety in your life. And I feel like love is the way to like gain safety. And so even though I have been in education for over 25 years, we do academics, like if you need help, but that is not our main goal. Our main goal with our students is to show them diverse opportunities, because the reality is that children from these kind of neighborhoods don't have any less intellect or ability than anyone else, but what they don't always have is a huge, beautiful horizon. So we feel like if we can kind of change the narrative, add some colors to your horizon, open it up a little bit, then somebody getting you to take a class that you don't want to take necessarily makes more sense. So by doing that, and we make sure that we say we love you to everybody as soon as they walk in the door. We know names of brothers and sisters, favorite colors, just all of those things. And my husband gets to be at the forefront of it. And it's something magical to see little kids gravitate towards a big burly Black guy who, you know, if you saw him on the corner, you'd be like, oh my goodness, you know. And then I come in all happy and peppy and like, we're going to do this math. And they're like, okay. But I know it's a little bit of everywhere, but it's because it's really a family. So sometimes it's hard to give you a formalized description of a family, but these babies are ours. Their parents are ours. We celebrate life events with them. We get to feed them now. So our biggest push right now is just opening this juice bar and watching kids be able to give healthy vegan options in a food desert that tastes good, so that people can start to realize, like, it's not just about plant-based. I know that that is my lifestyle, but that healthy can be delicious, and it doesn't have to be off-putting or, you know, something that's unattainable. And so those are our main goals right now, is to just shine a light in a place that has been considered dark, so that people can really know that it is actually a beautiful neighborhood right on the water that is filled with just families and happy people who are looking to be the best version of themselves, like the rest of us.
Thank you, Danny. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your family. Tiana, I'd love to hear your story and your work.
First off, the two co-panelists that have already spoken have blown my mind and have filled my glass. So thank you so much. It's interesting, like the timing of this. So speaking, I love speaking, like something like this. This is my first time being on a panel. So thank you, Jennifer. And the timing is just wild. So like, this is my first time speaking since being a divorced mom. So like totally single mom, and post-COVID and all that. And leaving the church that Felipe left too. So So like, I get you. I've lived in Utah also. And I just made the announcement of leaving the church like a couple months ago. And it's just like, I'm trying to find my identity while simultaneously working on the biggest canvas that I've ever tried to work on in my life. And so I guess like my background story, or like how I even got to where I'm at, I guess it would first make sense to even mention where I'm at, besides like the personal, vulnerable, like, is peace in my life right now? I don't know. Probably more than I think. I don't know. Anyway, so I guess I'll start with like how I started with most of my speaking engagements since I started speaking. So, I did things the way that a lot of us, are kind of told to do things, right? Like get married and have babies. And so I got married, right? 2013. And 7 months later, I was pregnant and gave birth, right around the due date to a healthy baby girl. And that was 8 years ago. And 3 weeks later, her dad was arrested and sentenced to a pretty serious crime. He's an LWOP, right? So life without parole. And that was in California, where I currently still reside, my home, my home state. And I just was like, I've always been like a kind of like spiritual person, right? Like whether religion or not, it's just like, oh yeah, I talk to God. And people are like, you can't talk to God. And I'm like, yes, you can. And so like, I'm like, God talks right back. It's totally fine. And so I'm like talking to God, like, hey, I wanted to be like a full-time mom. How am I supposed to do this? And God's like, just share your stories and find out what happens. I'm like, okay, thank you. And so I start sharing my stories, and then that's how like a year later I get, public speaking events and different things, and people are like, it was like a little Me Too movement before the Me Too movement happened. I'm like, what? So I start talking about the, experience of just being married for the time that I was to this guy who puts himself in prison, and I'm like, wow, that was crazy. And then I talk about like, I was like, oh my gosh, vulnerable again. I was exploited to prostitution the night of my 18th birthday, and it was me who got myself out of that, And so then I'm like sharing these stories to people, just like being super vulnerable. And my mom's like, yeah, don't do that. I'm like, I'm not going to listen to your advice right now. and so I'm like doing this stuff and seeing how it goes. And like, then women who I went to church with when I was a child, like my leaders, they're sending me messages and like, yeah, I had this experience and that experience. And the other people are like, yeah, I'm a stripper right now and I don't really want to be that, and I'm like, what? This is a problem. This is a serious problem. Like, what is going on? And so like, even right now, as I'm like, I've only been divorced since November, the end of November of 2021, right? So that's like super new for me. I just left the church that I was born and raised in like a year ago, this past February. COVID happened like right when I got accepted to a prestigious university. I'm like, still, someone's like trying to move in on my life, like, hey, let me be your mate. I'm like, I'm not even ready still, and that's like been going on. And so like when it comes to being invited to this, like Tiana, I read that email again today, like, okay, let me just prepare, because I don't know. You're like, Tiana, I see you as a peacemaking leader. I'm like, that makes one of us. I'm like, man, but I love what Felipe said, like, you have to give yourself that compassion. You have to give it to yourself first for it to spill over to others. Like, on the first year of the Symone Foundation, I had just, okay, again, working with canvases that are like bigger and bigger and bigger. It was my daughter and I that like, I had this 4 foot by 4 foot canvas, and my aunt had given it to me because I saw it and it was just blank and it was sitting in her home. and she was living in Temecula. And at the time I was like living in part of California, like almost central, super dirt, gross. And I'm like, I'm moving down to San Diego because that's where I want my final destination to be. Because at that point, my daughter and I had lived 12 locations in her 5 years of life. 12. I'm like, it's a good thing she's super resilient, because like people probably think I'm crazy, but I'm just trying to figure it out, you know? Like I didn't sign up to be a single mom. And so I see this canvas, I'm like, I want that. But of course I'm always broke because the system does not cater to single motherhood at all. It doesn't. And so I'm like, I want that. She's like, well, it's going to cost this much. I'm like, well, I don't have that. And I think she gives me the canvas and money. And I'm like, thanks. And so I bring it home to our little tiny, you know, place. I'm renting a room out of someone's home. And I'm like, and I, you know, in my mind, the way my mind works, I recently realized I'm like super on the spectrum. Okay. The way my mind works, I'm staring at that canvas like for months, like the Sistine Chapel sort of thing, right? You know, like it takes him, he's like staring at it forever, and then he finally like paints it, right? So I'm envisioning all the different options that could be made into a masterpiece on this 4 foot by 4 foot canvas. And like, then all of a sudden I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not painting. And so I'm like, Coraline, that's my daughter's name. Coraline, you want to paint on this canvas with me? And she's probably like, yes, like already, you know, she's 5 at the time. And we take it out and we just go to town with what we have, like half empty bottles of acrylic. I use my feet and shoes, and she uses her hands, and we use plants and all sorts of things. We had it hanging up on this wall. People would come in and they would stare at it like, and when I would tell them how it was painted, they're like, what? You and a 5-year-old? I thought you had purchased this from like, I thought this cost you like thousands of dollars, you know? And I'm like, oh, sweet. So anyway, talking about a canvas for a long time, I brought that to the homeless women of San Diego, that concept of just letting go, you know, and it ended up being a really cathartic experience for them. And our first year was just like, so far to me, it felt like the most successful. We too started 3 years ago. I think Felipe mentioned 3 years. We started like right before or in the middle of the pandemic here in San Diego. And it was really cool to see what women could create together communally. So like 4 to 6 women, different layers, different weeks. And it's like a dreamscape, if you will. And it's just escalated from there into something that, you know, I work with women on the streets and talk with them, and just like, I guess I see myself in them. And a lot of the times, like as I put myself out here, you know, the feedback that I get from other women is that they see themselves in me. And so really, like as a woman, I think it's part of our nature to work as a community, not just like focus on ourselves, you know, like not give into the mindset of like, oh, it's all about me, you know, but like we grow as we work together. So I don't even know if any of that like was chronological anything, or even touched on peace or anything like that. But I feel like the more I just give myself to my community, as simultaneously giving myself to my daughter and making sure I take plenty of Epsom salt baths in the meantime, I just find a little bit more of myself, and I can dig deeper into who I am as a woman, and it really brings me a lot of joy. And that's that.
Thank you, Tiana. And is what you're saying is one of the things that you do with the women that you work with is art? Is that one of the pathways that you guys do a lot of?
So that's what started it, and that's what I'd like to happen. Again, like the first year to me was super amazing, and I'd like to incorporate that continuously. Like I'll make bracelets with the women, so that way it's not like I'm trying to drag a giant canvas with, you know, like wherever I go. So I'm making it like more simple, but like bracelets, like, you know, just, I don't know, like lava beads and gemstones. Like us women kind of like connect with that. I think it's just because it's, you know, you can hold something that's like billions of years old potentially, you know, and or wear it and just put something in an oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, like create something that is unique to you or what you're feeling at the time. So like, for example, these bracelets, like it's cool to sit down with a woman who's filled with anxiety and just be like, hey, you want to just like chill and make a bracelet? And with one of the experiences, she was like, yeah, I was at like an 8 on a scale from 1 to 10 for anxiety when you first arrived. I was like, yeah, I could tell. And she's like, but now I'm like at a 2 after the bracelet making. And it seems strange, you know, and it's like, yeah, you should have this kind of degree and that kind of certification for working with, you know, people that are on, you know, like on paper, they have this and that and that. But it's like, no, it can actually be really simple, and you could touch people's lives and help people simply by being, you know, again, what Felipe mentioned about like that compassion for yourself. If you learn to simply exist, like, and that's enough, you know, when you bring that energy to whatever you're creating with whoever you're choosing to create it with in the moment, it spills over and they get to be with you in that energetic space, and it's really powerful.
Thank you. And I think it's kind of what Danny was bringing forward about a direct, tangible experience. So that's wonderful. Marlenis, we'd love to hear from you, where you've been and where you are now, maybe where you're going.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really feel honored to be a part of the panel, not just because of the safe space, but also because I feel like there's so many similarities and intersections with each of our stories that it's amazing that, you know, Jennifer is able to randomly pick certain people, put them on in one virtual room, and we can have so many similarities to one another. So I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I came to the United States when I was about 9 months old. I was born I was raised by a single mom who had a lot of support from her parents. So my grandparents always played like an integral role in my upbringing. And I would even say the way that I was molded to be who I am. Fast forward, I've always been a natural introvert. And I think, you know, growing up very involved with my church, involved with the youth group when I was a teenager, that really helped me to break through my introvertness a little bit. So I like to think of myself as being an introvert with like extrovert aspects in there. So my faith did have a lot to do with me being able to speak publicly and be able to connect with others. Throughout my life, I've had a lot of different roles where peace was home for me. You know, here or I represent Pathways to Peace, which is an organization that is recognized by the United Nations. So we do a lot of work there on a global scale when it comes to peace. Some of the programs that we participate in or that we educate on are nuclear disarmament in Albania, exceptional women of peace, how to be wisdom keepers, and different forms of advocacy. So I became involved with Pathways to Peace in 2016, and the vision for Pathways to Peace is simple: a world at peace. And, you know, thinking about Avon Madison, who co-founded Pathways to Peace in the late 1970s, she would always say that you are a pathway to peace. So kind of thinking about Tiana and how she was speaking and saying she doesn't know if her story has anything to do. I would like to say that, you know, we all have a pathway to peace, even if we recognize it or not. It's just a matter of, you know, how you give back to the world and how you plant your little seeds for others to kind of receive on their end. In terms of profession or career-wise, I work for the Division on Women currently. It's and I live out of New Jersey, so it's a state agency, but what I do is basically create programs for women and girls to allow opportunities when it comes to entrepreneurship, business development, and a lot of things that have to do with like rape prevention, anything that has to do with gender-based violence. We also work with that. Let's see. And prior to my work with the Division on Women, I was working for a similar state agency. It was the Division of Child Protection and Permanency. So I worked there for about 9.5 years. And I had a lot of different roles there. I was an investigator. I did more of like the ongoing work with kids that have been abused and neglected, and kind of combining the two. My career, I would say, is something that I didn't necessarily choose or know that I was going to get into. I think it kind of chose me. But, you know, I always did it wholeheartedly. And it was one of my passions without me even knowing that it was a passion. Being able to serve children and women, and, you know, when they're so vulnerable and at a state where they need the help and they don't know where the resources are or that there's even any resources available. So I did that for 9.5 years. And then, like I said, now I'm focusing more on women and being able to incorporate girls and giving back to girls in the community as well.
Awesome, thank you. I actually feel like one of the things that has jumped out at me from each of you, and maybe we can riff on it a little bit more. And I also want to open it up a little bit. You know, I'll kind of give my thoughts here, but if you guys want to ask each other things after that, you're welcome to do that. But I kind of heard the word safety really loud, and I know that that's been really big for me personally as well in my journey. And I haven't really shared my story in any of these, and I'm not going to exactly right now, but one of the things that I always felt like was that I was always in a battle, like, and I was losing. Like, you know, whether it was something in my religion or something in the schools or something in the how binary our society is right now or ever. And you know, just, yeah, family dynamics, different things. It's like you walk out your door, you wake up in the morning and you have to, and yourself, like you're something's wrong with you, you have to fight yourself to whatever. And so finally, like, and we're talking, you know, my 40s, I was like, I am not safe. I've never been safe. And that's been my whole life. And so a lot of my finding inner peace has also could have been called finding safety. And I will also offer that a lot of that has been some traditions that, like meditation traditions and things like that, that remind you that there is no battle and you're not broken. And sometimes it's hard to try to get, like, that doesn't make sense. Like I need to fight something. Like whether it's myself or my neighbor or, you know, the other party or the other country or whatever, we have to fight something. And it's quite the journey or the eye opener to think, we don't have to fight each other that much. You don't have to fight yourself, self-compassion. But I kind of want to maybe each of you talk about safety, either well, maybe it's with some of the people that you work with or yourself, how what that looks like, and or how you approach that, or if it's maybe this is the first time you're thinking of it too, or maybe it's something you've been dealing with the whole time anyway. Hopefully I made enough sense there. But Danny, any thoughts on that?
Sure. For me, when I think of safety, again, I feel like my word is always love, right? But it's just building, I believe in building spaces for people to feel like they can be their whole self, and sometimes that's me saying, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't reflect on your difference when I created something or when I said something. It's letting people feel safe to ask questions about unsafe topics to me and know that I'm not going to judge them and that it's all in love. I always, when I got, clearly my story is my husband and I usually are always together in interviews because we do everything together. It's okay, he didn't need to be here. But I remember when I got married and somebody was getting married behind me and they were like, do you have any advice? And I was like, no. But I was like, I feel like real relationships. So this is my advice I give people, but I give it across the board, is that when you love people, it's that belief that it's the knowledge and knowing that you're going to hurt one another, but it's the belief that nothing was done in malice. And so when I'm working with the kids, and I have several step kids, and I am very much a truth teller in love and letting people know, like, sometimes growth, there's pain that comes with growth, and sometimes you have to get that from someone who loves you. But if you know that they're not doing anything with malice in their heart, that it's all for the good of you, then that starts to quickly knit these safe spaces for people. For children, I was excited. One of the best things that happened with our kids was we had this kid, and we, after a while they find us on Instagram and follow us. And my husband was like, hey, did you see that in his description, he's bisexual? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, how, my husband was like so amazed that he was so proud of it. And that all of these other, because at the time we only had little boys, and that all these other little rough and tumble young boys trying to figure it out could care less. And I was like, that is because we made sure that they knew, like, we were a family and all of our bits and pieces were all a part of this. And he was like, I just never thought about something that is so hard for some people to come to grips with would just be nothing. In a group full of young Black boys who are often told that you are only straight, you are only this, you're a cookie cutter, you should fit it. And this kid was like, listen, I'm going to be the best version of me. And they were all like, we love you. We don't care. We don't hug you any less. We don't say we don't love you. And so I feel like when I think of safe spaces and creating them, what I really get excited about is what you see happening inside of them. And it really allows people who might not even need the safe space to really blossom into who they're going to be along with everyone else. And it's just, when I was young, everybody felt like everything was fine, but there's always hurt in people that's hidden, and it could be a big hurt or small. And I think a lot of times when we go through something, we measure it against someone else who seems to have gone through way more than us. And the reality is that everybody's hurt is designed specifically for them, right? To grow them and to create this new version of themselves. And it doesn't make it less painful because it might have less notoriety, or it might not be in a Lifetime movie, but giving people space to know that your hurt, no matter how it's measured against anything else, is important and it's painful. And we'll kiss your boo-boos and give you Band-Aids no matter what kind you want or need. So that's safe. I know I said a lot of things, but safe space, I think, is super important in this day and age because people are trying to rob folks of their voice and their identity, of stories that make people feel safe in their own rooms when maybe there's no safety in the house. And so I think just an important piece. I think that's probably why we all lean into it in the work that we do, because we know by meeting so many different people how important it is for people to be them whole selves with you.
Thank you. And just almost another little thought, but I love watching the rising generations who, you know, we and also the generations before us, like they've fought for these things, they suffered for these things, and then all of a sudden there's a generation that wakes up the next day and goes, you know, we got it. So I love seeing that. Like, oh, it's not hard. It's just the way it's supposed to be. Anyway, Felipe, hold forth a little bit on on this topic or anything that you've been thinking about as you've listened to other people.
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of different reflections that come to my mind about safety. It's incredible how, you know, biologically speaking, our body, our mind, our brain is always on the defensive. Like, how can I survive? How can I never be killed? How can I not, you know, be a threat or be under threat? And so that moves us in our personalities and our behaviors to always be in a protective way, in a defensive way. So is jumping the stairs a bad thing? Yes. So I'm afraid of that. I'm not going to do it. You stop yourself from that. It's really sad to say this thing, but nowadays it seems like safety is a privilege, a commodity. It's not something that we all get to have. And sadly, in a way, all of us have experienced something that has allowed us to understand that we needed safety in order for us to thrive. And the same way that we needed that safety, there are others around us that need it as well. And so I think a big motivator for us as peacemakers or people that work in social justice or in things like this is understanding that by addressing safety, we are letting our bodies and our minds just like calm down for a second. It's like a deep breath in a sense, you know, just like getting all that oxygen in and realize like how, like, I don't have to worry about this anymore. Now I can thrive by being. And providing those safe spaces are incredibly important because that's when people get to finally not have this constant fear of what ifs, or am I going to be attacked, or am I going to be bullied, or am I going to be killed? And we see that we are constantly searching for that safety. We see the migration issues that are happening now with refugees from Venezuela and people in the Ukraine, like going everywhere else because they're looking for safety. Their government is not providing that, so they're going away. We see how businesses now, you know, they try to have like a sticker something, this is a safe space. So like if a person that is queer or a person that is not white in a mostly predominant white culture can feel safe, can feel okay, can feel like not threatened. And so it should be a motivator for all of us to make sure that for the next generation, safety is not a privilege, but it's a given. That we all get to enjoy safety, that we all get to experience safety so that we can all thrive and grow and be happy. And happiness, I feel, comes, at least in my life, from authenticity, from being who I am, from feeling safe enough to say the truth, even if it might hurt, to feel safe enough to be who I am, even if I might think that somebody else might feel uncomfortable. No, again, and this is kind of like define like this idea that we've all grown up with, like, oh, think always of the others first. No, once again, we need to think of ourselves first, fill our cups, take that mask, whatever it is that we need to do in order for us to be happy first. Because if we don't address that ourselves personally in our own lives, we will always be searching for that on somebody else or in some other situation, and try to fill that need with someone or something when in reality it should be us. And that's the and if we don't find it, or if we find it for a little bit on someone but not fully, or it's been taken away from us, we feel this like rage, this anger because this person didn't fulfill it when in reality it was all us. It has to start with us first. And so in order for us to understand that safety is needed, we need to provide safety for ourselves so that we can provide safety for others. Most of us in this work, as I said, in a sad way, have all experienced this unsafety, this like, like, what are we going to do here? And because we experience it, we don't want anybody else to feel that. We don't want anybody else to not feel safe, because when we feel safe is when we thrive, when we're happy, when we can be ourselves and take away all this like heavy weight or loads that comes from society. Just like you were saying, you know, the binary, the patriarchy, capitalism, we can go deep on this shit, on this stuff, right? But but yeah, I think safety is such an incredible component to peace, because when safety is there, peace can live and surround, you know.
Awesome. I really love how you're expressing that. And it reminds me of that when you talk about our experiences leading us to our service. The image I always like is like the sand that gets in is it a clam or an oyster that makes pearls? I'm not a biologist or even apparently went to elementary school, but the sand inside them is what helps them create the pearl or whatever. I always like to remember that little analogy. Marlenis, do you have any further thoughts on this or anything that's coming up for you?
Yes. So when it comes to safety, you know, I feel like in my life, I've worn a lot of different hats, and I wear a lot of hats now. Outside of what I do with work or what I've done with work, helping vulnerable children, I have children of my own. So I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So when it comes to safety, I always think about them, right? Or when it comes to anything that I do, it's almost like tunnel vision with them at the end. And it's like, what do I have to do to ensure that they are safe? Unfortunately, with all the tragedies and things that we see in the news, you know, we can kiss them goodbye in the morning when they go to school and hope that we're going to see them when they return, or that they will return to us, right? But I think for myself, I kind of think with safety, when I think about safety and peace, I think of it in 3 different aspects, right? You know, everyone has a calling, and sometimes we know what that calling is and we adhere to it. Sometimes that calling just kind of falls on our lap and we have to go along with it, or we learn along the process. But, you know, I think there's 3 different types of ways to work with peace when it comes to safety. And I feel like this is something that I've always applied in my life. So we can be peacemakers, we can be peacekeepers, and we can be peace breakers. And, you know, peace breaker might sound like a horrible thing, but it's not, because what it is, it's just a way of us challenging the status quo and advocating for a positive change. You know, when we're talking about peacemakers, like Felipe mentioned, you know, it's a way of trying to maintain harmony and trying to prevent conflict from escalating or from getting out of control. And when it comes to being a peacekeeper, more of trying to maintain harmony, and peacemakers trying to find the resolutions, or trying to understand what the conflicts are so that we can address it. And I can tell you, from like the 5-year-old and the 6-year-old, I apply all 3 of those with both of them, because sometimes they're fighting each other and it's like, all right, I'm going to be the peacemaker here. Let's bring this back. You guys are brother and sister. Let's get along. And sometimes it's like, all right, that's it. Like, you have to, you know, kind of challenge the status quo in society to hopefully expect better results for them or anyone in general. And yeah, so with safety, I think one of the main things also is a lot of times we're very quick to speak and we're not quick to listen. So, you know, sometimes, and I'm sure Danny knows from working with children or with the youth, sometimes all they need is a listening ear, someone that's going to listen to them, someone that's going to say, you know what, I understand where you're coming from, or maybe I don't understand, but thank you for sharing your story with me, because now we can do something about it. Let's challenge the status quo. Let's, you know, rustle some feathers to get you the help that you need.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I think, you know, peace does, and I'm not the one who made this up, but peace is not the absence of conflict, right? In fact, true peace is going to have some very important conflicts in it that we have to have. It's just like how the way that we would do that. And even things like, and anybody within the sound of my voice, if you have never read the letters and writings of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I encourage you to do that. And one of the things that I learned from one of his, well, probably through all of the letters, but he had people who were telling him, hey, yeah, we're your allies. We want to help you, but we've got to do this easy. We can't upset everybody too much. We got to like take more time on this. And he's like, we're doing this now. You know, so we're not here to make everybody comfortable. So yeah, so peace is not necessarily all Pollyanna stuff, but kind of like some of you have already said, being able to be your whole self, and that process. And even if you think, again, I love my analogy, sorry, but if you think of it, you know, a seed growing up through all the stages of being a seed, you know, that's probably like, what's happening to me now? What's happening to me? Oh my goodness, oh no, this is not fun. I'm having to be different than what I was before, you know. So, and that applies individually, it applies to our whole society. Anyway, so Tiana, any thoughts at this point?
Heck yeah. I feel like this is way more my jam. I'm like, yeah, let's talk Peacemakers. I'm like, yeah, I could talk about that all day. I love that. And Martin Luther King, oh my, letter from Birmingham jail. Huh. Talk about, if you ever need a quote for anything that has to do with liberating anyone from oppression, you could find at least 20 solid gold ones in that. Oh man, I love that man so much. Sometimes Coraline and I will go on walks and we'll meet amazing individuals, incredible people. And she's like, was he an angel? Was she an angel? I'm like, yeah, I think so. What do you think? And she's like, yeah, I think they were. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, but like there is, I love that. There's peacekeepers, peacemakers, and peace breakers. I'm a peace breaker. I'm a peace breaker. Because you know what, like you talked about, Jennifer. Oh man. There's a painting that a lot of people have in their home of George Washington on one knee next to his horse, right? Praying right before going into battle, right? Do you know the painting I'm talking about? Yeah. I mean, right. Yeah. But like, I remember when, like, always feeling the energy of different people, you know, and like our forefathers, they fought for freedom, and they fought for liberation. And so when you talk about like there's a future and there's our generation that's growing up right now that's like, I'm gonna be me. But then there's also the people who fought for that same thing. I feel like some of us, you know, like some of us are millennials, right? And we're just like, where do I fit in? You know, it's like we were part of the raising up of like everything changing super rapidly around us. It's like, I can't catch up. What am I, like, where do I fit in? I don't know I don't even know what's up or down right now, you know? And so like, back then, 200, 300 years ago, there was battling for peace. And then they declared and wrote something that they're like, this is what's going to bring us peace. And that's super great. I'm happy for that time that it worked then. But we do need to break a lot of that stuff. We do need to advocate. And there's another word that's coming to my being, yes, activism. We need to be actively engaged, and we need to advocate for the, you know, like what Danny said, all the boo-boos. There's different boo-boos going on, and they need kisses. And the safety is love. Oh my gosh. You know, same thing. Our first year, we went into, like, it wasn't a homeless shelter and it wasn't people who were unsheltered. It was like this gray area of like, we'll subsidize your rent and you can stay here as long as you want. And I remember talking to the program director, like, okay, these are people, like what comes next, you know? And like, I don't know, you know? And I'm thinking like, they're people with complex trauma overload, you know? They need to be shown that they have value, they are worthy of creating amazing things, that they have a place in society. Just because they don't fit into what the system is saying, like this is how it goes, doesn't mean that they should be shoved to the side. It means we need to like ask more questions and we need to listen. What Marlenis said, you know, like listen. And adults, you know, like the adults I work with, the women I work with, like some of these women, they were born into abuse. Like, what do you do when you're born into abuse? What do you do at that point? You know, like, yeah, we need peace breakers because we need people listening to them. Some of them, they're on the streets. Like San Diego hasn't had that great of weather lately. Some of these people are wearing cold, soggy socks, walking the streets. Like that's a problem. Felipe mentioned binary patriarchy capitalism. Like, who does that help? The people who want that, yeah, great. But again, peace breakers, like listening. And if we're not taking care of my friend Anna on the streets who's wearing soggy socks in the cold weather, who I conversed with when she's like crying at me, like I can't even get medical assistance and I have pneumonia and I want to die, Tiana. Like if we're not taking care of her, but we're focused on going to another planet, then we need more peace breakers. Okay. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, my dear. Yes, you all are not random invitees, I guess. Well, I've kind of always been this person, but definitely, this is the 8th edition, right? So I've gotten to do this a few times, and every single time, the people that come through, and I just know that's going to happen. I just put out my seeds, and I know that the people that need to be here are going to come through. So it's been wonderful. Well, we're going to close. I'm going to let each of you, if you can do a 30-second, anything else you want to say, or what you wish you could tell the whole world, or yeah, just something you can soundbite for me maybe, and to close with today. Let's see. Tiana, I'm going to let you just go ahead and I don't know what orders we're all going in, but go ahead and give us your final thought.
I feel like I said so much. I don't even know what to say after that. I'm like, blah, here's my spiel. Let's see. You know, a lot of us get to create things, right? Free enterprise, and we're in like a millennial creator mode. But I think that what it is about like just being a good human, you know, like there's so much that we can be involved in that other people are doing, you know, and like this, what an honor to be on a panel, to take notes, pages of notes already of like the good things that we're all a part of, you know, like be a good human. Let's just all be good humans.
Thank you. Felipe, final advice or wisdom for us?
I think it requires a certain type of people to watch this or to participate on this, right? Like the message that I want to leave with the people that are watching this, that will watch this at some point or another, is to know that you have incredible power, that you might not think it, that you might think that you are just one little single being in this incredibly huge universe, but we all have the power to create change. We all have the power to create ripples of compassion. It is important to remember that you have the power. It's important to remember to love yourself, and that as you live authentically, unapologetically, you not only will find happiness, but you will pass that happiness on to others. And if there's no, you don't need to have a volunteer project or an organization or an institution or a business. Like if you do it, hell yeah, you know, like great. But if not, know that sometimes just your influence, just your listening ear, just a little statement of your authenticity to somebody else can cause an incredible ripple of change around you. So know your worth.
Awesome. Thank you. My little example for that is like pick up litter. You're picking up litter, you're helping us out. Marlenis.
You know, thinking about, I think Jennifer, you mentioned you kind of like drop your seeds out there and see what comes back. And it made me think I have a mustard seed that I keep on my desk. And I don't know if you guys know what a mustard seed looks like, but it's very small. And basically, you know, it's, to me, it's a seed of faith, right? So if you believe that, if your faith is as big as this mustard seed, which is very small, like Felipe said, you can create those ripple effects that are necessary to make a change or to make a difference in the world. And it doesn't matter how small or how insignificant you think the thing that you're doing is, that one small step or that one small seed that gets put out into the world can be so much greater. You know, like I mentioned, I have a son and a daughter, and I also mentioned that everything that I do for them or with them in mind. And my only hope is that, you know, at the end of my life, if I don't get to accomplish everything that I wanted for myself, my hope is that they'll be able to either finish that or do what they want for themselves, but even on a greater scale. And also, I just want to end off by saying that everyone is a pathway to peace, and we all have the potential to create peace, to make peace, to break peace. And, you know, we're all in this together. So we can be that ripple effect for the world, or that the world needs to kind of continue along the journey. So thank you for having me on here, Jennifer, and thank you to everyone else that was on the panel as well.
Thank you, Marlenis. And Danny, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, Tiana said something when she was talking about making her art, and she said she and her daughter just used what they had. And I think that that is the real message. Like right now, the world is in a rough place. And I think everybody lays in bed and thinks of ways to make it better, or to create peace, to create safe spaces, to love one another. But the reality is that there's a million little things that you can think of to be like, this is why I cannot do this. This is what I do not have, be it a talent or money or some kind of gift or a way in. But the reality is that I think a lot of us, if not all of us on this panel, we just started with exactly what we had. Our goal, at least our goal, was not to be a nonprofit. Our goal was just to send out some love. And we started with what we had, which was feet and friends and hot dogs. But the reality is that big change doesn't start with a big plan. It typically starts with a very small movement. And as you gain momentum and as you are consistently loving on people repeatedly, you build trust, and then you just grow. And that is how real change happens, with very small steps and people just willing to risk what they have, just what they have, to use it to make the most of the moment. And if we all just use what we have right now, I think we could all make some huge change in this world, and we need it.
Thank you so much. And we have been so fed today. I'm so excited for our listeners who are going to be able to hear this. And thank you once again, Danny, Marlenis, Tiana, Felipe, for sharing this time with me. Goodbye.